This is the Social Factor.
Record is stuck.
Hello, everyone.
Excuse me, Charlie.
Welcome to the Social Factor. This is your host, Josh. I got Stephanie right here with me. And David.
Oh, look, David just got here.
Yeah. David is
I should try to clear off this chair.
just got here. Anyway, so today's topic is going to be American education, and woo, you okay there?
Yeah, I figured I should get another chair.
Okay. Yep, David.
Charlie, come here.
David just showed up, so apologies for the rambling and whatnot. We're on the air right now.
Hello,
Charlie,
everyone.
stop
I am
howling.
here and hither.
Charlie, stop howling.
Yes. Yeah, sorry for this unexpected intro. David was running a little late, so I had to start the show without him, which is a first.
It is. Actually, I'm on time, but in a way, we were delayed by the place that we stopped at. It was the worst service ever.
Where?
McDonald's, of course.
Oh, shit.
I like to get my drinks over there.
Okay.
I have a gift for you, too, by the way.
And
Just from... I ordered it.
we have
You put that in your epaulette.
yeah, I see that. Anyway, what was I gonna say? I forgot. Oh yeah.
I have no idea. You were just kind of rambling until we all got settled in.
I know, because there's a lot going on right now, and I'm just trying to stay focused.
Well, we have a title for this show today,
American education.
and we can go into that right away.
Charlie is licking the frosting.
Charlie,
He's a bad dog.
Anyway, Stephanie is back with us for this topic today. So let's get right into it, I guess.
Well, I guess I will say, and this is David, if you don't remember my voice, although it sounds very funny when I listen to it.
all recorded voices sound
Isn't
funny.
it?
You don't
Yeah.
like the sound of your own.
I hate my voice in recording.
So do I.
I sound like a dweeb, but that's okay. I don't feel like a dweeb. I've done some research on U.S. education, okay, or the system that educates people from kindergarten all the way through 12, and then of course the higher education, which is the universities and colleges, and you also have your community colleges and your technical colleges. The thing that I discovered, which was actually very shocking to me, is if you look at U.S. education, the way it's conducted, meaning how you get into the classroom, you have your teachers basically dictate to you educational material, whatever the subject may be, actually stems back to the Protestant Reformation.
Wow.
Yeah. And if anyone understands the historical significance of that, it goes back to the 1600s. We have not changed since then. And one article that I read was very interesting. The subject was, are American schools actually harming students? Yeah, it was very interesting, and it talks about the socio-economic aspect of it, and how teachers have not been taught how to properly teach, or they've been stuck on the old school pattern. And technology actually creates a problem within the classroom for the teachers. And having said that, when children enter kindergarten, in this day and age, your generation, Josh, not mine, but your generation and your generation, Stephanie, you guys are well able to handle a cell phone or a phone that has all these different apps by the time you're ready to go into kindergarten. And that kind of takes away from the teachers, because children have access to all this information. Okay?
Right.
So it's actually created an imbalance in the education system. So that's one aspect of it. Here's the other aspect. There are international exams, placing exams, math, science, and reading abilities, which measures the nation's grade. It's graded. Now, it was a surprise, but it wasn't a surprise when you look at the top 10 nations. Okay, most of them are European, but the further down you get at the best schooling, Japan is number one in the world, and then there's Singapore and South Korea. Okay, now those are also cultures where discipline is a big factor. It's ingrained into society. There's a hierarchy. You know, the families, the young people take care of their elders. You know, there's a very different environment, a different social environment than there is for instance, in the United States. You know, there is a bit of a degradation when you look at society overall, from where we were in the 1950s to where we are today. Very different concept of the family structure. Okay, in fact, the 1970s and the 60s really proved to actually have a hindrance. And there was a lot of anti-establishment beliefs happening. And no offense to anyone that's from that era, Charlie, seriously, kick him out. Sorry, I was gassed over here. If you look at the 1960s and 70s, that's where, between the equal rights demonstrations to the hippie movement itself, it became very anti-government, very anti-establishment, and therefore, people take the most simple thing in the 1900s, early 19th century, all the way up until about World War II, into the 50s. Okay, when a child would not address a person, an adult, by their name, they would say "ma'am" and "sir." Okay. Now, I'm from a culture where that's still happening, okay? And the language is structured to show respect. But in the United States, that changed. After World War II, a lot of the GIs says, you don't need to be calling me sir. I wasn't an officer in the Army, okay? Or in the whatever branch, and my name is so-and-so. So that caught on up until the 1960s, mid-60s, when all of a sudden status didn't matter anymore. Okay, or class, and but that's kind of a fake reality, because in essence there are still classes to this day. You have the very poor, you got the barely making it, okay, and then you have your middle class, okay, and even they are hardly making it, all right, and then as you go up the echelon, so back to schooling, the rating as I was studying different articles and different studies, they kind of vary based on who you're writing or who you're reading from. The international study was that we were actually 24th in the world. Okay, our rank was 24. Now, some studies showed it as 32nd, and other studies showed it as 36th. So I'm just gonna, in a roundabout way, say this. We're not the best. We're not the greatest. I don't care what the Huffington Post says, okay? Huffington Post, supposedly, I read this article, I was actually not impressed by it. Number one, it attacked the right-wing party, blaming them for all the social issues that we have, including education. I personally think that's a bunch of BS, okay? That's the typical attitude of the Huffington Post. And their writers and editors, but ultimately what it comes down to is the United States needs to reassess and reevaluate how they're educating their children. Okay, I know I went from a German school system, to when I came over here at the age of 13, and I found, besides having a language barrier, I found that the way they were teaching, the way my teachers were teaching me, was actually harder than it was in Germany, And the funny thing is that I remember in 8th grade we took a Civil War exam, okay? And I still had a lot of problems reading and writing English. But I aced that exam because I knew about the Civil War, the U.S. Civil War. A lot of German children understand other people's history, but not in America. People hardly know their own history in this country. And that's a problem, because if you don't understand your history, you're bound to make the same mistakes as prior. Okay, and you know what I'm talking about. So
Did you know that you're live right here too?
Oh my God, are you
Did
serious?
you even know that?
I was like doing all these movements.
You're live right here too.
Hi, I'm the old man in the group. But that's cool, you little shit.
You're looking at this like, what? Okay.
Well, I'm just
I
like,
knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
okay. So let's. I'm gonna hand this over to Josh. I kind of introduced this subject with a lot of information. Josh, take it from here,
Well,
please.
it's funny because when you had said that, you said that it seems like college professors don't really know how to teach too well.
No, I'm not talking universities and colleges.
No,
I'm
we were
talking
talking
K
about-
through 12.
Yeah. we
In
left
universities,
college
it's
out of it.
actually very different. Now, here's the
okay.
thing, though. Most nations, most industrial nations, we call them first world, second world, and third world countries. Okay, the first world includes the United States. All right? Also includes countries like Sweden. Let me see. Oh my God, I'm having Denmark, Norway, and so on. Into Germany, Austria, Liechtenstein, you name it. Then moving into Asia as well. Some countries in Asia, like Japan and South Korea, are first world countries. So here's the thing. Education from grade 1. In Germany, we don't have kindergarten. We have grade 1 all the way through your education in the universities is all free. Most countries is free. In Germany, over the years, like when the wall fell, the burden of rebuilding the East Germany was so high that things changed a little in Germany. Where they now take for instance, my brother got his bachelor's degree, and it paid him. He had to pay, I believe, 5,000 euros if you look at the whole. Now, that's not much money compared to what a person has to do for a 4-year degree in this country. Most of them come out at about $55,000 to $75,000, $80,000 by the time they get out. Now, if you go to like a master's degree, then you're looking at another $30,000 just for that. And so people end up coming out of these places was all this debt. Sweden, all free. All the way through your bachelor's, and I think also you can what's that called? You can apply to go to your master's and above, or your doctorates. Okay, and it's sponsored by the government. Also, the United States is. I was looking at this one chart, had all these major countries that are in the first and second world area, and you look at the top one and you go all the way down. We were one notch above Mexico in spending towards education.
Okay.
On the bottom. Meaning that we do not fund our education infrastructure and programs like other nations above us. I mean, Poland spends over $11 billion a year, and they're number 10 of all the best schools in the world.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, Japan is way above that. Okay, South Korea, I am shocked. I mean, I had a friend from South Korea, and he went to our schools, and he would always complain about Germany. Like, this is not how I learned how to do this, But come to find out, Germany wasn't even in the top 10. Germany was like 14th, And, of course, that was kind of a letdown to me because I figured it'd be one of the top 10s. But, so education needs to be properly funded. You have a system that's on the same premise as something that came out of the 16th century. The reason that the Protestant Reform created the education process that we now use is because they needed the children to learn how to read the Bible. That was the sole purpose of it.
Mm-hmm.
And later on came mathematics and sciences and everything else, but not at the beginning. Now, the structure, the way it's designed, is the same as it was back then, and that's kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
It's like we haven't evolved educationally.
What's this whole Common Core thingy that's with
That was the Obama administration.
There was a lot of talk about that. What is that?
Well, Common Core is actually it's if you look at it, I didn't look it up this time, but I have read about it before, and it's basically like a reconditioning of students, their ideology. It's a conditioning process, accepting homosexuality and transgender. It was one of the states. Not being a racist was another one.
I thought Common Core was a learning technique, not...
No, Common Core is a structure.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's not a learning technique. It was meant to unify children. Okay.
But everyone learned the same general thing.
Not only that, but also that the atmosphere was more appeasing and more friendly towards children. I mean, let's talk about this. When I had my children and they were in school, okay, the last thing I wanted them to know at the age of 8 is sexuality, okay. But in some schools, in most schools now, they already start. Woo! Oh, nice. At that age, telling them about and asking them if they're homosexual or not.
Good.
Do you feel a certain way? Do you like boys? That kind of stuff.
I think that's way too early.
Oh my God, that's not right, and that's happening in schools. Has happened, you know.
I don't think people know what they like.
It's
about
very
life.
impressionable on these kids. Now, if I was 8 years old and someone brought up an idea I've never heard of, what is homosexuality? And listen, this is not a put down on anyone that is homosexual or transgender. In fact, hang on.
Okay.
In fact, I have had many beautiful friends that are in that category. Okay, who I don't really care what they are. If my children were, I would love them the same. But I'm just talking about a system that is bringing something to their students that's way too early. Okay, I mean, in my time, in the late 1980s into the 1990s, when I finally graduated, the word homosexuality was never used in class, even in sex ed. It was just not used, and partially because even back then there was not the understanding of homosexuality like it is today. Remember the DSM-5, actually the DSM-4, called it a mental disorder. Mm-hmm. Okay, so something like that is just that's part of Common Core.
Yeah. And
Understanding and respecting sexuality.
And on the other end of the spectrum, I was never given a sex ed in school at all.
Yeah, and you know what? Probably better for you.
Right. I don't mind it at all.
Listen. It's good
So
for
that's what that is, huh?
boys and girls to understand their bodies. It's good for them to know at a certain age what's going to happen. That's perfectly fine. But it should also be the parents' responsibility. And often the parents, and that's another problem in education, are the parents themselves. They don't partake. They actually literally throw their kids at the school system and expect the teachers to be the parents. Mm-hmm. And that's a fact. Majority, I mean, it's very common, you know, and sometimes I guess I could be blamed for that too. I trusted my educational infrastructure to teach my children, you know, and if there's a problem with their behavior, come and talk to me about it. You know, in my days there was no talking to a parent; it was just instant reaction,
yeah.
you know, from the teachers. So yeah, I mean that's one of the aspects of Common Core. You know, another thing. I think this dog is killing me, dude.
Should I open a window?
Please.
Cold.
That much? Is that okay?
That's fine, dear.
Another thing is socioeconomic disadvantages for a lot of school kids. If they're in a level where they're completely, like you would consider, severely deprived of money, okay, are not living well, maybe don't even have parents or have one parent, that definitely does affect how they're going to be educated or how they receive information. You know, many countries, like I like the Sweden setup. I mean, it's completely run by the government in a sense. And in the United States, here's another thing: most nations have national identification regarding their education standards. That's done by the entire nation.
Right.
In the United States, it's actually based on your state.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And the federal government is always trying to. I mean, these two entities, the federal government and the state, and they're constantly in rivalry with control. Okay, and the education system, there's funding from the federal government in every state. Okay, just like the National Guard is funded, it's partially funded by the state and controlled by the state, but it also has funding from the federal government in case for upgrading their gear, their weapons, and stuff like that. The same goes with the school, and when they do these tests like the PISA test, and then they have the OCED test. These are all international exams that the United States is also a part of it. Here's the thing, though, like the ACTs and stuff, which is a placement test for like future colleges and stuff.
Yeah.
The PISA, it's not the ACT, but the PISA test is a global test that all 15-year-olds take. So often it's what sophomore to juniors. Well, actually, sophomore to juniors. Yeah. Freshman, sophomore. And so they take it at the age of 15, and that's how the United States is placed on the entire continent, on the entire world stage. And again, you have a lot of countries that are educating these children a lot differently, okay, than we do in the United States, and therefore we don't play so well, which makes us look like we're really bad in school, And quite honestly, when it came to mathematics, I couldn't stand it. I did not do well in math.
I suck at mathematics.
Yeah.
She is awesome.
Well, that's good. That's good. So she's one of the gifted ones.
What can I say? She's brilliant.
Awesome.
Oh dear.
All right, I'm handing it over to you before that falls down again.
Before that
Before
falls
your
down
dog
again.
farts again.
Before he farts again.
Well, I'm gagging
Well,
over here.
Charlie, you're very sneaky.
I know that we're talking about K through 12 here, but I do want to just talk. I do want to mention this one thing. When you were talking about how like some teachers like don't know how to teach or something like that at the beginning of the episode.
No, it's not that they don't know how to teach. They're only allowed to teach a certain way.
Right. So when I transitioned into college, it was like there was like a big difference in the teaching techniques.
Totally.
There was like a huge difference.
I did so much better in college
Yeah.
than I did in high school.
And I thought, and I'm like looking to, and I'm like, I thought about it for a while, and then I talked to one of my high school teachers about it. I said, teaching techniques seem to be a lot different in high school through college. And I said, because the professors in college, they don't really seem to know 100% how to teach. They definitely know what they're talking about, but it just seems like their teaching style is a lot different, and it's like it just seems like they don't know how to like teach as well. And he said that's because if you're going to be a teacher for K through 12, then you actually have to have a teaching degree. If you want to be a professor in like for college or something, you don't actually need a teaching degree. You just need a degree in what you're teaching. That's what I was told.
Well, I will tell you that college professors are probably more advanced than any high school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they're actually university professors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, or you have a college, like I can see that happening in a technical college or a community college,
Mm-hmm.
where as long as you have a teaching degree of some kind, you can
Right.
be in it. But not when you get to the major, like the bachelor's and major university type colleges.
Exactly. Because another
So
thing
I disagree with him.
Yeah, and another thing that I saw is that in college, they make you do things a certain way, even though there may be multiple ways to do it. They make you do it their way,
Well, that's high school too.
and they just kind of
that's just school in general.
and they don't let you be creative, I guess.
Okay, which is a good subject right there. Creativity is a big factor when it comes to remembering things. Okay, the problem was as we were talking about the archaic style method of the U.S. school system, which you know what archaic means,
Yeah.
right? Is that it takes away creativity.
Yeah.
I mean, from K to 12.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, like, because when you're when you're in like in K through 12, everybody you like literally have to learn the exact same way that other people.
They're not taking into account any learning
Exactly.
disabilities or anything like that.
You literally learn the exact same way, and if something, if like if like some some students might learn the technique better than others, and if you fall behind, then you're basically
was me.
screwed because
That was me.
then you have to because then basically you have to like stay after class and basically it's just only the students that actually learn with the technique that they're presenting.
Here's what I read in this one article about that same subject. The archaic method, the Protestant Reformation style. Okay, it wasn't only in America. It actually came through England into the Americas. Okay, and but it was most of Europe was like that. The Protestant movement, the Martin Luther King movement. Because that's really what started that entire thing, the Lutheran movement. Problem with that is there's several things, there's several key factors to it. Number one, everything, it's all based on memory. You have to be able to memorize things. Even our midterms and all these things, a lot of us don't have that kind of memory. And it's not something you can always learn because each person's brain is different.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Another thing is it was a structure designed to create obedience.
Yeah.
And if you ever notice, most schools, especially in the old days, they were based on obedience factor. Okay? And what happens to the kid that doesn't listen properly or is not in line with everybody else? Well, he gets ousted. He gets, what's that word I'm looking for? They point fingers at him. They make him look bad. And a lot of these kids, there was several names mentioned in this article. Bill Gates.
Bill Gates.
He only had like a month of college.
Yeah.
And they said, in this article, part of it is because here you have a genius. Okay? A man who really, he's out there. Okay? I mean, he's not like super intelligent, but he's the one that introduced Windows to us. Okay? And he only with very little college, he was able to achieve all that.
Plus, he had like all these resources at his disposal that no one else really had.
Like what? He didn't come from a rich family. Not at all.
I forget what they are, but I will show you.
Well, wasn't it Steve Forbes?
Steve Forbes?
No,
What?
Steve from
Jobs. That's
Jobs.
Apple.
Okay. Well, at one point they both worked together.
Really?
Yes. They knew each other very well. And if I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, they both started Silicon Valley.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, we'll have to look those facts up.
Well, I think that Microsoft came around the same time as Apple, but I'm not 100% sure
I'm telling you,
because.
at one point they were working together.
But
And
see,
then they had an incident.
the thing is, see, in the movie Jobs, like in those movies that are made about Steve Jobs, the movie makes it seem like Steve Jobs didn't know like really anything really about programming or computers. He just had that entrepreneur go-getter attitude that they just.
See, and that's Bill Gates as well.
They portrayed that in the movie, saying that like basically, he had there was this guy Steve Wozniak, who was also the who helped Steve Jobs create Apple, and Steve Wozniak, he knew all the programming and all the stuff about computers, and Steve Jobs, he was just fascinated by this technology, and he's like, I think we can really make something with this technology and give it to the world.
He was the mouthpiece.
So basically, he was the one that basically spread it out to the world, trying to sell it. He was basically the one that convinced people and made it innovative and stuff like that. But the movie just didn't seem like he really knew it from behind the computer screen.
Correct. I mean, going back to what we were talking about.
She was gonna say something.
I was gonna say that could support the fact that they work together if Bill Gates knew all the coding.
Yeah.
Well, I know that I read somewhere that Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, not Forbes, definitely at some point worked together. And I think there was an incident that made them split up. Now, I'm thinking that was Steve Jobs. Could be somewhere else, someone else, but I'll check that out and maybe on the next show give you the update.
Well, some people think that it was because Bill Gates stole the idea from Steve Jobs. Some people think that, but I don't know what the real story is there.
Well, that's exactly what I heard.
And and some people think it's vice versa. Basically, that was the whole argument there, that they basically stole their ideas from each other and tried to like create their own companies without the other or something like that.
Yeah, I think because I mean it makes them look very cutthroat, both of them. You know.
Yeah.
And I know that Bill Gates had a major lawsuit, an antitrust lawsuit back in 2005, I believe.
Yeah.
But you know what an antitrust lawsuit is? Usually it's the government wanting to go after you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you know, the thing is that one thing is I want to talk about, since we're talking about schools and teaching and stuff. I looked up a very frightening statistic, and that's involving school shootings. Okay, believe it or not, the first school shootings happened in the 1800s, but actually in the 19th century, the late 19th century, there was one school shooting, and there were 24 people killed and like 36 people injured. Okay, that was like in the late. Now in the early 20th century, there was 60 school shootings, like in the 10-year span, 60 school shootings, and I think like 200 people were injured throughout them. Okay.
Okay.
60 dead. I'm sorry. 60 school shooting, 100 and some people were killed. Now this is just 1900 through 1910, and as it went on, it went on to, and it's really weird. You can all of a sudden see a surge. Every decade, it goes higher and higher and higher. Okay, and then between 2000 and 2000, was it 8? 224 school shootings. From 2008 to 2015. Now, mind you, we're still at the beginning of the century. We're not even in the 25th part, the quarter century aspect. We are at 255 shootings just between 2010 or 2008 and 2015. 255 shootings.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a lot of, and what it's showing is this increase. Now, it's not a new phenomenon. Yeah, it's not a new phenomenon. Okay.
Yeah.
What it is, though, it's alarming. If it started already being a problem in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, that tells you, I mean, we've never heard of this. Okay, nobody knows that this all started in the schools already in the late 1800s.
Right.
So, and it's now it's an epidemic. It's to a point where it's crazy. I mean, 255 shootings in less than 7 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All in the U.S.?
Yeah, only the U.S. It doesn't talk about any other.
Oh, any other countries or anything?
Yeah, this is all U.S. stuff.
Okay.
And you know, I know a lot of people are going after the guns. It's the gun's fault.
Mm-hmm.
No, it isn't. It's the people using those guns.
By the way, those listening are welcome to comment on what they say, what they think. You know, we're actually doing a live video for the first time, and you can
You can see
I didn't
David.
shave.
you can chime in the comment section beneath the video or on the podcast audio speaker.com/the social factor.
Yeah,
chime in on this.
Thank you.
You don't just have to listen. You can actually chime in on this too, and stuff like that. So
okay, yeah, and school shootings are a big part of our American education system now. I mean, if you think about it, it's a very sad part. It's a very destructive part. And this will probably lead into next week
with our topic next week.
Yeah. In a few of the cases, I'm not going to say many of the cases, but in a few of the cases of school shootings done by a student, that actually attended the school, not an outside individual that came in and started shooting shit up. It's been shown that they were severely bullied by their classmates. I mean, there is a certain hierarchy in schools. You got the jocks, you have the jocks, you have the geeks, you got the nerds, you got the loners. I remember that from my days. I kind of was in between the jocks and the loners because, and I was severely verbally bullied.
Yeah. Now we don't know if bullying is actually the core reason, but in this, but I mean, it's
from a
just one of the-
psychological point of view. If an individual goes after a particular group of people in school,
yeah, it's one of the scenarios that
And
is being brought up, as to possibly why this is happening.
And I mean, some of the cases of the school shootings that I remember, it was bullying. I mean,
Yeah.
the shooter
Right.
would come out and
Exactly.
say, "This is why I'm doing this. You all are awful." Whatever.
Exactly.
and the thing about that is every individual has a breaking point. And there was a few times I got in fights when kids in America. No offense to any Americans, I apologize, and I'm an American citizen myself. But sometimes you run your mouth a little too much without thinking of the consequences. One thing I remember being in school is they would do a lot of yapping at me because they knew if I did anything to them, I'd be the one in trouble. Okay? And I'm sorry, in Germany, teachers usually stay out of the way, especially if it's a bully. Bullying is not even... You don't think about bullying because it doesn't happen. You have individuals that pick on another person, and usually other individuals take care of the bully. Okay? At least in my school system, in Offenbach, Germany, we got in a lot of fights, but you know what? Afterwards, we shook hands and we were good to go. Sometimes there were fights between people from different races, especially refugees that would come into our schools, and they wouldn't act appropriate according to German standards, and it would cause friction. But there are a lot of mean kids picking on pretty good kids, and knowing they're going to get away with it because either the kid's going to hit them and get in trouble, or they're not going to do anything, and they're going to continue damaging this individual. And that's what I've noticed throughout the U.S. is I had friends in Phoenix that I lived by, and I saw that in the school system. A lot of bullying is a big problem in this country, and we will definitely discuss that in the next episode. And it's an issue that I'm very personal about because my daughters both were bullied in a local school that, around here. And we ended up having a fight with the school because they were not doing anything to protect them.
So yeah, that's how we'll talk about bullying in this episode, because we kind of do need to save it for a 45-minute show next week. So yeah. Anything else to elaborate on American education?
I will elaborate on this. It was one of the worst subjects I've ever researched.
Really?
It's boring as hell. Number one, there's nothing you can do about it as an individual. Okay?
Right.
The United States government underfunds its education. That's without saying. I mean, if you're fifth on the bottom of all other nations, you're a first world country, but you're in the category of third world countries in funding.
So we need to give more money to education?
Mm-hmm.
We need to not only do that, but we also need to redesign how we educate our children. Okay?
Throwing money at a broken system isn't going to fix it.
Well, and every president has done that.
Yeah.
I mean, you had No Child Left Behind from the Bush administration, okay? And in 2015, a new one from Obama came out, and I forget what it was, and it showed it proved very ineffective, okay? But it's not really... The programs, the ideas are not bad. The problem is how do you execute such a program in a system that's way back from the 1600s?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So in a way, it's like conflicting towards each other.
Right.
So, and that's the only thing. I mean, as I said, doing research on this, it is such a complicated situation. There's so many different things that happen with the education system. You got to focus on one thing at a time, and if you think it's a simple investigative piece, forget it. Mm-hmm. There's so many different pieces involved in the education process, because you also have the infrastructure within an infrastructure. you have the infrastructure of the teachers, the principals, and then also you have counties that are different from each other. I mean,
Yeah.
so there's no unison in anything, no unified type of education process. You know? That's how complicated it is.
Exactly. Yep.
So that's all I got to say at this point.
Well, yeah, I love that quote that you said, honey. Where you said the thing about throwing money at a broken system ain't gonna fix it.
Yeah.
That's a very rational one. She's right.
That's a brilliant quote right
It
there.
is.
But use that in the description of when I post this podcast on the to share with the Facebook page or whatever.
Yep.
That's a brilliant quote.
Well,
Oh my god.
yeah, it is. It's a very good quote. I remember. Remember I told you about the Huffington Post? They actually were in denial during their article. They were saying that there's nothing wrong with the American system. There are a few things wrong with it. This is one of the greatest systems in the world, and I mean, having been in another country and having been educated by that, it was surprising how much more, and afterwards I'm like, I really appreciated the German way of teaching. I mean, I remember all my teachers; they were great. I had my learning problems, but it's funny. I came here and I felt smart.
Yeah.
And this was out in California. And California is known to be not the greatest education state in the world.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
Yeah. Well, you love LA so much.
You do.
Yeah, it's a fun place.
It's great to visit
Mm-hmm.
until you have your first earthquake.
Until you have your first earthquake. Yeah. I
I
won't.
don't know.
I had a few of them.
An experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It is funny when the first year I was in California, my mom came from Germany and my dad was doing something. He was an academy for the youth authorities, and that summer all of a sudden there was this earthquake, and I'm sleeping and my mom's in the bedroom and she was in a waterbed, and and she's like, David, oh my god! And
As
I'm
the
like,
waterbed was just shaking.
and I could feel the tremors, but I was in my bed and I was deep asleep. So when I heard her scream, I'm like this, and I remember going there and the waterbed still slushing around, and she was just freaking out. She's like, "What is that?" So I opened the door, and and mind you, before the earthquake, there was no crack in the concrete floor. There was a big crack in the concrete floor, and I'm like, "Oh, we definitely had an earthquake." That was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just nuts.
Yeah, I've never experienced one of those before. And they just had one in Southern California,
They always,
a
every
couple
once in a
days
while
ago.
they have. So
Oh yeah.
actually, quite honestly, as far as I can remember being there, and I always hear something about California.
Yeah, and it's another topic to talk about in another episode. Earthquakes.
Tectonic plates. There you go.
Tectonic plates. Yeah, exactly.
I lived 14 miles from the San Andreas Falls, which is like the heart of where it all happens. Yeah, 14 miles from there. That was great.
Yeah, in the San Andreas Fault that runs from LA all the way up to Silicon Valley or something like that.
Past that.
Past that?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, anyway, we are pretty much nearing the end of this episode. Anything that you guys want to quickly say?
It's a tough subject to research, and it's even tougher to talk about it.
Yeah. Alright, so our Facebook page, you can go like us on Facebook at facebook.com/thesocialfactorpodcast. And our website's done. I'm just working on getting it up there. I think we're going to try doing this live video thingy too, here and there.
Yep.
More of a common thing.
It looks so dark on the bottom.
So we'll be back next week with an all-new episode of Social Factor. You guys all have a great night.
God bless.